This podcast will discuss sensitive topics surrounding ethnicity, sexuality, and profane and blasphemous statements. The content we are creating is intended for educational purpose with no intention of causing offence. We are creating this content in a light-hearted manner as to further educate ourselves and the audience. Audience discretion is advised.
Which one of these words do you find the most offensive? Mother, maybe what if I was to call you a
Ooh, perhaps cunt.
or maybe even
See you next Tuesday, a podcast series that takes you on a journey through the profane and blasphemous language we share and the public perception that follows with it. Episode 5, Battle of the Sexists.
Hello and welcome to episode 5, the final episode of the See You Next Tuesday mini-series on offensive language in broadcasting. My name is Isaac.
And last I checked, my name is still Dylan. Men.
And women.
Yes, in this week's episode, we are delving into the different levels of offence between males and females and the different words and phrases used to demean them.
Now, funnily enough, in researching for this episode, we stumbled across something quite interesting. So when we sat down and just off the top of our heads, we could rattle off 5, 6, 7 insults that are aimed specifically towards women. We could do that just like that. Maybe that's a reflection on our personalities. I hope it isn't. But anyway, when we sat down to do the same thing for men, we actually struggled quite a bit.
We did struggle a fair bit,
Yeah, we did.
So because of this, we did the only natural thing we could think of, and we took to the streets to ask people if there's any words that they could think of that we could not.
Now be warned, you will hear quite a bit of explicit language in this section because if we decide to bleep them all, you wouldn't hear anything. So please sit back and enjoy.
How many insults and slurs can you think of that are specifically directed at women?
Slut. Oh, skank. Whore. Oh, there's a lot actually.
Bitch.
Cunt. Pussy. Bitch. Oh, slut. Whore. Hoe bag. Listing things I got called in year 13. Slut. Whore. Bitch.
Whore, slut, wannabe.
Bitch. Slag. Hoe.
Slut, bitch. Slut, whore, skank, bitch. Yeah, I'm trying to think what I get called when I go to town.
Slut. Whore.
Slut, whore, bitch, pussy.
Pussy, whore, bitch, hoe. Fuck, there's a lot, I don't know.
Okay, so with that question, we weren't really surprised with the results there. The words that the public brought forward were very similar to the ones that we came up with as well.
Yeah, so some of the words mentioned by the public that also appear in the BSA study, which you can find in the link down below if you'd like to follow along, are bitch, pussy, slut, and whore, which we'll delve into later on in the episode. The C-bomb was also thrown around in there, and rightly so, but if you want to hear us talk about that word, you can go check out episode 3, Boomers versus the Woke Epidemic.
Yes, now, after asking the public if they could list any insults directed at women, we decided to flip the script and ask the questions that we were struggling with. Can you think of any insults or slurs that are specifically directed at males? And here's some of the responses that we got.
Now, can you list any that refer specifically to males?
Ooh. Oh, shit. Dick. Man whore?
Not that many, because you can use them for both women and men. I'm just like thinking like asshole or dick is mainly towards men.
Maybe wanker.
Yeah, not that many. Only a few. Wanker. No, like dick. But I guess you could say that to anyone.
I don't know. I would say the C word is kind of more directed at men. It's kind of a masculine one.
Dick. Wanker. That's about all I got.
I can think of just like dick, because they've got dicks. You know, it is a bit tougher actually.
So there you go. It would seem like the public, similar to us, struggled to get out any insults that were directed towards males, while insults directed towards females flowed out like a greased up man in a water slide.
Yes, now after much deliberation and talking to the public, the insults that we came up with for men were still quite generic, were wanker and dick, which are not on the BSA's list, and arsehole and cock, which are on the BSA's list. So Isaac, do you think it's kind of curious that if you really want to sort of like get under a man's skin, we have this like knack of like referring to men as like inherently female, womanly traits.
Yeah, it is super interesting, eh? Like, as we've seen from the list, there's pretty much no words that refer specifically to males. The closest one we can really think of, which isn't even on the list, was the word wanker, but even that is relatively generic. And yeah, you're totally right. We do, the best way to insult a man, essentially, is to refer to them as a woman, which is quite a sad fact, because that in turn insults women. You know, there's a classic phrase, you throw like a girl, or you even genderize a female-based insult like the term man whore to make it refer to a man, so that's still rooted in a female insult. And so that's really interesting, eh? So shall we delve into some stats and find out just what the BSA says about these specific words?
Let's start off with bitch. Number 29 on the BSA's list. 29% of people finding it unacceptable in 2021, which is a 4% rise from 2018, so it's on the come up. 65 plus is the age group most offended, with 49% of them thinking it is offensive across all forms of broadcasting, and the 25 to 34 least offended at 31%.
Our next word is arsehole, coming in at number 28, with 32% of people currently finding it unacceptable in all forms of broadcast, which is a 3% rise from the last study in 2018. The 65 plus demographic is again the most offended by it, with 50% of them offended by it, and yet again the 25 to 34 are the least offended, with just 29%.
We now move on to pussy, number 27 on the BSA's list. 33% of people finding unacceptable in all forms of broadcasting, which is no change from 2018. The 35 to 44-year-old age bracket is the most offended, curiously, with 48% of them finding it unacceptable. And again, the 25 to 34 finding it the least offensive at 34%.
Our next word coming in at number 25, cock. Sorry. Coming at number 25, we have the word cock, with 38% of people finding it unacceptable in all forms of broadcast, which is, interestingly enough, a 2% decrease from 2018. The 65 plus demographic is again the most offended by the term, with 56% of them offended by it, and yet again, the 25 to 34 being the least offended, with just 31% of them finding it offensive.
Coming at number 20, we have slut. 40% of people finding it unacceptable across all forms of broadcasting, which is only a 1% increase from 2018. The 65 plus age bracket finding it the most offensive at 58%, and again at 25 to 34-year-olds finding it the least offensive at 46%.
And finally, tied at number 20 with slut is the word whore, with again 40% of people finding it offensive in all forms of broadcast. This word is actually new to the list, so it's the first time it has been on. The age bracket which is the most offended is the 55 to 64 age bracket, with 57% of them finding it offensive, and coming in with a clean sweep, the least offended age bracket being the 25 to 34, or Dylan's age bracket, with 44% of them finding it offensive. Dylan, a clean sweep. Is your generation just desensitized to everything offensive?
We are the Chicago Bulls of the 90s of not giving a f*** about swearing. It is a clean sweep across the board.
I guess, first of all, are we surprised by any of these placements, Dylan? Did anything shock you here?
Not really. One thing that I thought was kind of curious, it's not surprising, but it is still curious, is that cock is on the decrease. The rest of them are either unchanged or rising. The fact that bitch has risen by 4% is quite curious. It is still the lowest on the list at 29. There's only 31 words on the list in general. But I mean, they're all still quite low realistically in terms of the list, aren't they?
Interestingly enough, something else that we also discovered is that women are more offended across the board than men, and we want to find out why. And I have a theory on this, Dylan. Hear me out, okay? I think this can come down to the fact that women have naturally better empathy skills or empathy levels than men, okay? There was a study done on this by Professor Leonardo Christoph Moore, as well as a whole bunch of other researchers. They worked together to perform a study which they titled Empathy, Gender Effects in Brain and Behavior. In the study, researchers investigated the idea that females are more empathetic than males. Across their research, they observed the empathy capabilities of a range of young male and female children aged from infant to toddler. The reason why they used young children was to eliminate response bias, as they call it, such as social desirability bias, which is where people give answers that they believe will make them look better in front of others, as well as hereditary bias, which is where a person's emotions are shaped by the way they are raised or taught by their family. Okay, very scientific today, so please bear with us as we go through this. In performing the study, the researchers found that infant females had a higher level of empathy than males in various rudimentary forms of empathy, such as contagious crying, neonatal imitation, which is the act of doing the same movement, usually facial expressions, after seeing it performed by a social partner, social referencing, which is looking to a social partner for information or reactions in ambiguous situations, and general social interest and sensitivity. They found that with age, this trend continues, if not increasing, due to the increase in empathetic skills, going to show that females tend to be more naturally empathetic than males, which could be one of the reasons why they are more offended across the board by these offensive terms.
Okay, well, there you go. You have science on your side. Well, that's what the stats and the science say, but what does the BSA say about these particular words on the list? We've brought back our resident expert from the BSA, Stacy Wood, to speak to the studies that they have conducted on these particular words. Stacy, how are we?
I'm great, thanks.
So, Stacy, having a look at this particular study, it's pretty clear to see that women are more offended across the board than men. Has this always been the case, or can you speak to why that might be?
Only from my imagination. I don't have a scientific answer to this. I wonder if it is partly because there are so many words that have been specifically used to denigrate women or that are based in women's anatomy. It could partly be because women are traditionally socialized to be nicer and more polite and feel like perhaps they should be offended by bad language. As someone with a bit of a sailor mouth, I can't relate, but I think those are probably both factors. And it is a trend that that seems to be pretty consistent. It's not a new thing. I'd be interested to see whether it changes over time, though, especially now that we're seeing the C word drop down from its number one spot.
Yeah, you make a great point. There are so many offensive words and phrases that are directed towards women, so I can see why that would make them more offended in general by all of these terms. We also have discussed that empathy could be a factor in this as well. So we've talked to the public, we've debated amongst ourselves, and off the top of our heads, we can, like that, think of 4 or 5 insults directed towards women, but the same can't be said for thinking of terms that are aimed at men. Why do you think that might be? Do you think this could be due to the fact that males just don't seem to be as offended by most of these terms?
Yeah, another really interesting question. And I mean, there are some, but even the ones that are explicitly based on men's anatomy, you know, your dick, your cock and balls, etc., so far down the list of unacceptability that they've dropped off our study. And I wonder whether, as well as the men tending to be less offended, it has to do with the patriarchy and traditional power structures and the fact that, you know, men have not been socialized to feel a level of shame or prudishness around their bodies that women have over the course of hundreds of years. Again, not an official BSA position, but something I've thought about a bit as a woman and as a feminist.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So when it comes to experiencing a level of hardship or oppression due to patriarchy, men haven't had to suffer as much and therefore more unlikely to be offended by oppressive terms or phrases. It's interesting as well that when insulting a male or when typically trying to get under their skin, your best bet is to refer to them as a female or insult them by calling them sort of like feminine terms. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think there could be any sort of negative repercussions?
Oh, absolutely. And toxic masculinity is one of the things that's been identified in some of the verbal responses in our study. So not just the list of words which are offensive in themselves, but people saying, you know, the words throw like a girl are not in themselves offensive, but used to say that that means that you're shit because girls can't throw is offensive. So it comes back to that context of how it's used, the intention behind it. And there are a lot of ways in which being a woman or being like a woman is used to insult people, which, as you say, is insulting in itself, because why should people be embarrassed to be like a woman?
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. And it's such a sad fact that by insulting a man, by referring to them as a female or giving them feminine qualities, that in turn insults women. It's just a sad fact that we do, and it's something that we definitely need to change. So Thank you so much for joining us, Stacey. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast across the mini-series. We really appreciate everything that you've had to say, and we wish you all the best moving forward. Thank you very much.
Okay, we've talked about the stats and we've heard from the BSA on their thoughts on these particular words. Now let's look at the history. First off, bitch. Bitch, meaning female dog, is one of the oldest words in the English language. It was found on Old English texts dating back to the Anglo-Saxon period over 1,000 years ago. Through linguistics, we can trace its origins back even further to the very beginning of the languages of Europe. The first recorded instance of the word bitch, used in the English language in a less than flattering manner, was the cycle of Christian plays dating back to the 1400s called the Chester Mystery Plays. In the scene, the king had ordered knights to round up and kill all young boys. When a woman refuses to give up her son, a knight calls her a slut. She responds, "Whom callest thou slut, scabbed bitch?" While the word was originally used to refer to a female dog, over time it was turned into a demeaning term for women, intended to refer to them as no more than a dog.
We now move on to the term pussy. According to the formal definition, the word pussy is a noun that means cat. It comes from the modern English word puss, which is the conventional way to address a pet cat, and no one is really sure when it became a slang term for vagina. There is a theory that suggests that the word pussy came from Old Norse. The word meant pocket pouch. While you might not associate a vagina with pocket pouch, the Webster's Third International Dictionary sure can. The dictionary points out similarities between pussy and the sense of vulva, and the Scandinavian word pussy that, besides pocket pouch, is also interpreted as being pocket and purse. So Vikings could be the culprits for the slang. However, we can't really be sure, but this theory is very probable. Before becoming slang, pussy didn't only refer to cats as well. The term was also used for hares, large rabbits, well, not large rabbits, a different species, but anyway, I digress. In the 19th century, the meaning of pussy began encompassing anything soft and furry, until it encompassed a girl or woman exhibiting characteristics associated with cats, such as sweetness or friendliness. Pussy can also be a verb. In that case, pussy means to act like a cat, to act like a coward, or to have sex with a woman. So a wide range of theories, but still no one is exactly sure where the word is derived from.
We now look at the word slut. The original meaning of the word slut was a dirty, slovenly woman. However, the first usage of the word slut referred to a man. The precise time in which the word came into existence is unknown, but is connected with the late 14th century. The first recorded appearance of the word was in Geoffrey Chaucer's collection of stories, The Canterbury Tales. It was published in 1386. He used the word sluttish to refer to a man's untidy appearance, to describe a slovenly man. The first recorded usage of the word with the meaning it has today was in 1402. The English poet Thomas Hoccleve included the term slut in his The Letter to Cupid to describe someone who was slovenly or dirty. During the next couple of decades, the meaning of the word spread to question chastity. In 1450, most people who used the word slut did it to refer to a prostitute, a harlot, or an immoral woman.
We now move to the word whore. This is a simple one. Whore is derived from the Old English word whore, spelled H-O-R-E, so without the W, which was used to refer to prostitutes or harlots. So the meaning of the word, as we know it today, has not changed much, but is now used much more degradingly towards women.
Now looking at the word cock, no surprises. The formal definition is male, chicken, or rooster, began as an Old English cock, C-O-C-C, in the late 9th century, which was formed as an imitation of the sound made by roosters. The Old English term was used as a nickname for boys who strutted about similarly to the supposed arrogant birds. The slang used of cock to refer to as a penis began in at least the early 17th century, being recorded in Beaumont and Fletcher's The Custom of the Country around 1619.
And finally, arsehole. The word arse, spelled A-R-S-E, so none of this slang that we use today of A-S-S, derives from the Proto-Indo-European word ors, spelled O-R-S, meaning buttocks or backside. The combined form arsehole is first attested in the 1500s in its literal use to refer to the anus. The metaphorical use of the word to refer to the worst place in a region, e.g. the arsehole of the world, is first used in print in 1865. The use to refer to an annoying person is first attested in 19 1933. So a very rich history.
But now it's time for everyone's favourite segment, the case studies.
Case closed. With the BSA.
Well, it is fair to say it was quite difficult to find some case studies this particular episode because these words list quite low on the BSA's list. There isn't a huge amount of complaints put forward towards them. More often than not, funnily enough, it is to do with the portrayal of women or implying that someone is, say, a slut or a bitch, but not the specific language used.
Okay.
But we have found 2 this morning, so let's dive into them.
The case study that I have for you, Dylan, refers to a comedy film called Overboard. So this complaint came forward in 2002, so a long time ago. So Overboard, a comedy film, was broadcast on TV2 at 6:30 p.m. on Saturday, the 21st of September 2002. It portrayed an arrogant and spoiled woman who, through a number of incidences, discovered humility and love.
Oh, bless.
Yeah. The film was rated G. Okay, this is an important factor.
Okay.
Rated G, yet it's 6:30 on a Saturday. Okay? Important factors. Remember that for later. Tuck that in the back of your head. So, the complainant complained to Television New Zealand, the broadcaster, that the language used was unacceptable during family viewing hours. He specifically referred to the use of the words bitch and slut. Okay? So, the BSA unfortunately didn't give us any examples of these words being used. It didn't give us a script. And so, we love doing that here at See You Next Tuesday. And so, we did some research, we found those scripts ourselves, and so I have 2 scenes for you today. One of them's an example of them using the word slut, and another one is an example of them using the word bitch. So Dylan, I would love to bounce off you and do some acting with you, Dylan.
Okay, perfect, we're good for this.
Okay, so how about, in the first one, can you be Dean and I'll be Annie, okay?
Okay, I can be Dean, alright.
Okay, right. I assume these people are just like talking at one point. I assume Annie's the spoiled rich girl, but we don't actually really know. But let's just do that. Okay. Right.
All right.
And action.
All right. You jumped my bones the first night we met.
We did it on the first date?
Couldn't call it a date, really. We just did it in the parking lot of the 7-Eleven.
I'm a slut.
What did you say?
Nothing.
And scene.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. So a G-rated movie, might I add, talking about doing it in the parking lot of a 7-Eleven, and then she refers to herself as a slut. Whoa. Okay. Right. And then this is another example of them using the word bitch. So in this one, I'll be Dean, and can you please be Billy Pratt?
Okay.
Just another dude. Okay.
Oh, yes, I see the script here. Okay.
Right.
Perfect.
Okay. Are you ready, Don? Yeah.
So then,
Lights, camera, action. That's her.
Who?
The bitch. That's it. That's
okay, excellent. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So
that has a lot of context to it.
It does. And so that's 2 examples of those words being used, but there is more. We just don't have time to delve through all of them. So the complainant obviously complained about the use of this language and then complained to TVNZ, but they declined to uphold the complaint. TVNZ said, in context, the language did not breach the current norms of good taste and decency. In declining to uphold the complaint, TVNZ noted that neither word was inherently offensive in the context of the film. Neither word was described as vulgar slang by the concise Oxford Dictionary, and neither word featured on the list of offensive words drawn up after research by either the New Zealand or British broadcasting authorities. So this means that back in 2002, slut and bitch were not on the BSA's list of offensive language.
Okay, that's quite curious.
Yeah. And so, dissatisfied with the decision, the complainant referred this complaint to the BSA. And he said that to say that the use of the words bitch and slut did not breach Standard 1 is nonsense. If this is the case, then the standards are slack and need reviewing so that the television our young children see is acceptable to decent New Zealand parents. No amount of spin doctoring and convenient interpretation or use of the dictionary can convince us that such language is acceptable to children of 6 and 9 years of age, which I assume are his children, and their parents. Which, honestly, in my opinion, is valid.
Yeah, I can kind of see where he's coming from, because you said it was a G-rated movie at 6:30
in the afternoon on a Saturday.
On a Saturday, okay. That is definitely like prime time, plop the kids in front of TV while eating dinner sort of territory there, isn't it? Okay.
So this was obviously given to the BSA, and the BSA, their hands were unfortunately tied because TVNZ was right. These words were not on the list of offensive language, and so they really had no grounds to stand on for this complaint. So it was, unfortunately, in my opinion, not upheld. If that was to happen today, that would totally get upheld because those words are on the list and they're deemed significantly more offensive now. But the fact that it wasn't back in 2002 is quite interesting, eh?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
So Isaac, I've actually got a case study for you as well. This one it's curious in the sense that it's not the word being used, it's more the absence of, and also the setting and the context. See what you think of this one.
Yeah.
So the complainant Mikkelsen put forward the complaint against Television New Zealand in 2013. So an item on 7 Sharp, a New Zealand current affairs and entertainment program, sought to test the public's reaction to an incident of violence committed against women in a public place. So a hidden camera was used to film the reaction of bystanders who witnessed a woman being verbally and physically abused by her male companion. These were both actors, of course, in a busy Auckland park. So during the broadcast of the footage, instrumental excerpts from the song Smack My Bitch Up by The Prodigy played in the background. Okay, so just the instrumental of this particular song.
Okay.
So the program was broadcast at 7 p.m. on TV1. They don't have a rating here, but I think for current affairs it's
Counts G.
It counts as G.
Yeah.
So Mr. Mikkelsen made a formal complaint to Television New Zealand, the broadcaster, alleging that the use of the song Smack My Bitch Up during a segment on violence towards women was hugely inappropriate and offensive and undermined the message of the segment. I can kind of see where he's coming from here.
Yeah.
It is really important to emphasize, though, it was just the instrumental. There was no lyrics used involved.
Okay.
So the song's title and lyrics were not mentioned in the broadcast. And the BSA have said we accept Television New Zealand's connotation that only viewers who knew the song well would have identified it from the instrumental experts without the words, in the sense that audience members who fell into the two categories.
Okay.
So some viewers may have known the song and consciously applied the words "smack my bitch up" even though no lyrics are actually broadcast, this being the category of which the complaint was actually filed.
Yeah.
So ultimately, by the sounds of this, it went to TVNZ, and then TVNZ said, nuh-uh, and then it went higher up to the BSA.
Yeah.
So for most of these viewers, we do not think the choice of music would have been unduly offensive in the context of the item, as it was legitimate technique used to reinforce and oppose to undermine an important objective of the segment, namely raising awareness of the issue of violence against women, and we need for people to stand up for the perpetrators of such violence. The use of instrumental elements only without reference to the song's title or lyrics helped draw attention to a serious issue without being so in your face, that's in quotations, to cause unwarranted offence. Okay, so it's a curious one because I can kind of see where the complainant is actually coming from on this one.
Yeah, so can I. Because obviously, if you don't know the song, then it's just background noise. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
But if you do know the song, then it does, like the complainant said, it takes away from the message. And then the other perspective you can take on it is that the people that made this, so they obviously filmed it, and then when they were in the post-production stage, they went, you know what could be funny? I can only assume that's kind of what they were thinking. Is let's put the instrumental of a song about beating women underneath this, you know?
Yeah, like in the editing process, they 100% knew what they were doing.
100% they knew what they were doing.
Like they took the lyrics out as well because they would have been like, oh, can't put that in there. But like, why would you just leave the song in general?
100%. And so I'd say it is distasteful from the broadcaster's point, like it's distasteful on their behalf. I'd say that because the word isn't being said, there probably isn't necessarily grounds for a complaint, but the broadcasters need to kind of sit back and be like, why did you actually do that? It's incredibly distasteful.
Questions need to be asked. But ultimately, the BSA's final ruling on this was, accordingly, we are satisfied that upholding the complaint would be an unreasonable limit on the broadcaster's right to freedom of expression, and we decline to uphold the freedom of expression.
Again, I can see what they mean by that. Like at this point, the BSA doesn't really have any authority over this because there's no language being involved.
Yeah.
But I think it's the kind of thing where the broadcaster needs to step back and going, is this distasteful? Is this not? Because you don't have to use offensive language for something to be distasteful, right?
Correct.
And so, interesting.
So the See You Next Tuesday stance on this is 7 Sharp. Take a good look at yourself. Well, that's enough listening to two men rant on. Let's move to another perspective. Our next guest is Mel Abbot. Mel is an acclaimed female broadcaster on the male-dominated station The Rock FM, where she features on both The Morning Rumble and then gets a well-deserved break from the fellas and heads through to The Rock Workday. So without further ado, hey Mel, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Hey guys, nice to be here.
And it's great to have you here. Now, first of all, we're just really curious, what's it like being a woman in such a predominantly male-oriented radio station? Have you had any experiences with offensive terms being used against you?
So yes, I work for The Rock, which is predominantly targeted at males 25-54, so it's a very male-orientated audience. And just going to The Rock workplace, I don't think you realise how many women actually work at The Rock. I know I'm surrounded by men in the studio, but we have a very strong team of women working behind the scenes. You might only see like the one woman behind the mic there. I'm very lucky to have a strong bunch of both men and women working alongside me. And I can honestly say I've never experienced it in terms of co-workers using anything like that towards me. I have had that from listeners, but not really in terms of, can I use the word vocally abusing me as such? It would come from something that I've said on air in regards to something. So, for example, I remember I couldn't really pronounce a word, a te reo Māori word properly. And so people are coming back going, "You dopey cow, can you get this correct?" You know, they're more angry at me for not getting that right, as opposed to just sort of coming at me for out of nothing. Does that kind of make sense? So it was more like race, to do with race and culture, as opposed to them just coming out of nowhere and abusing me.
Well, it sounds like you've got a great community around you at The Rock. It's such a shame that after a mistake you made with the mispronunciation of a te reo Māori word, which, let's be real, you're not the first person to do, led to an insult that referred to your gender, which was such an irrelevant factor in the current situation.
Yeah, I can't say I come across many people using those kind of terms. I mean, maybe they do online, but the text machine and on the phone, I've never sort of experienced that. And I don't know, I feel like the boys would be pretty quick to pull it down. I mean, recently we had a call, and this is just maybe diverting a little bit. We had this rogue caller who he had won a prize, and as part of a prize, he was like, "Oh, can I have Mel for the weekend?" And the boys and myself were just very quick to shut it down. It's sort of like there's just no tolerance for that. And it's nice to see men actually backing that and leading the charge.
Okay, that's really, really cool to see that the men that you work so closely with were really quick to diffuse the acts of what can only be described as sort of like blatant sexism, and they're, like you said, sort of leading the change of this movement. Now, Mel, we've been asking the public if they can, off the top of their heads, list offensive terms and slurs that is specifically aimed at women. Can you give it a go? How many can you name?
Okay, so off the top of my head, bitch, hag, cow, slut, bimbo, gold digger, dick, prick. Can I actually say the C word? Homo, pussy. Yeah, that's what springs to mind.
Okay, great. Fair few on the list there. Here's a twist, though. How many can you think of that are directed specifically at men?
Some of the things I just said there, like asshole, prick, I guess. Yeah, not as many. Yeah.
It's so interesting, right? We've seen, like, looking at the BSA's list, there's so many that refer specifically towards women, but pretty much none that refer specifically to men. So based on the placements and standings of these words referring to women and on the BSA's list, what are your thoughts on their standings? Do you think they're in the right spot? Should they be higher? Should they be lower?
Okay, well, straight away, I noticed the word whore, which is quite low on the list in my opinion. I kind of feel like that should be a little bit higher. My personal experience, the word whore and also slut, which is just above it, I think. A lot more harsh and offensive than, say, the word hoe, which has the exact same meaning essentially, but evolved to be used a little bit more lighter, if that kind of makes sense. Also the word bitch, quite low on the list, and I'm not really too surprised by that. That, one of the more well-known slurs for women, I guess. Battled a very long history of abuse against women, still can pack a fairly offensive punch, you could say, even when used by women towards other women. But I feel it's shaped to have a more positive meaning in some contexts. I mean, for example, people are now using the expression like badass bitch, which you kind of want to be called. My friends and I use it often. So yeah, I reckon you can say the word in a particular kind of context or tone, and that has a lot to play with it. So I feel like those two things have a lot to do with how the words come across.
That's just a really valid point regarding the term bitch. We hadn't really considered that it was being used sort of positively, and with like the terms like badass bitch or like boss bitch, and they're almost like sort of terms of like endearment now, I suppose you could say. But again, you're right. It depends completely on sort of like the context of how they're used, or sort of like the tone of voice and things like that. Another thing that we've sort of discovered across our research is that women seem to be across the board way more offended by all of the sort of words aforementioned than males, which is we find kind of interesting. Do you know why they might be?
I know, I was looking at that too. I think we have come quite a long way from where women were somewhat maybe passive because of their socialised roles. But there has been a massive shift, as we know, change being attributed to things like the Me Too movement. You'll know that movement creating awareness around sexual abuse, sexual harassment, particularly in the workplace. I feel like women are just feeling like they're more empowered to speak up about it, believe that they're going to be heard to a certain extent. So, yeah, perhaps they are more offended, but potentially it's because more and more women are just vocalising it now, feeling like you can actually call someone out for being offensive, whether it's directed at them or just in general.
That's a great point. Honestly, it's so great to see more and more women coming forward and feeling comfortable to speak their minds and call out this denigration and, let's be honest, just blatant sexism. Now, you alluded to this in one of your previous answers, but something that we have seen in every episode prior to this is that the idea of context is so important when using these terms and slurs. Would you care to expand on what you said earlier?
Yeah, like I said before, so the context kind of determines everything, doesn't it? I mean, I'll give another example. Like the girls and I are using that word bitch at work, saying, oh my God, she's such a bitch, you know, and then that tone is implying something as well. And then one of the guys in the office has come along and been like, oh, she is a bitch, and has taken that to a completely different level. So there's two things at play. It's like the context and the tone that, really have a different kind of harsh impact on certain words.
That is really interesting that when a male uses a term or word like bitch aimed at a female, the whole context and sort of tone shifts. Any reason as to why you think that might be?
Yeah, and again, I'll just go back to that whole change that we've seen. I think women they're just taking a stand, and for so long that they weren't really able to voice how they felt about particular things, and men were. So maybe it's just a part of that, like holding on to that and being like, no, we can say this now, but you can just sort of back off and let us sort of have a bit more power to what we're saying.
Yeah, much like the last couple of episodes, the idea of reclaiming words to kind of avoid the power of them or more take the power away from them has been such a strong theme throughout our mini-series. Hey, look, Mel, that's all the questions that we had, but is there anything else you wanted to add before we finish up?
I just think it really comes down to awareness and just knowing that you don't really get to control who uses these words or how they do it, but you can sort of control the way you want to conceive of it and respond, which is totally up to you and really important.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, we can't control the actions of the people around us. We can only respond in our own way to things that we think is inappropriate. So it's a great point. Hey, look, Mel, that's all the time that we have for today, but we really appreciate having a yarn with you. We appreciate what you have to say. So thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Well, with that, we come to the end of the See You Next Tuesday podcast mini-series. Wow. It's been a long journey. I know I've learned a lot.
I've learned plenty, yeah. It's been a very, very surprising journey that we've undertaken, and The guests that we've talked to along the way, the studies that we've uncovered, it's been pretty eye-opening, I'm not going to lie.
It's been awesome. I hope you guys at home have learned something as well. I think something that we really should mention is just that every episode, the same thing that we come back to with our guests and with Stacy every single time is the idea of context, right?
Correct.
Context is
absolutely.
such a huge factor in how offensive a word is deemed in any given scenario, whether that context is being used as a reclaimed word, being used in an educational sense like we do, or if your context is you are using the word to insult someone. That's the bad one, by the way, if you didn't know yet.
That's the main takeaway from this. Don't do that.
Yeah. And so I think something that all the way back in episode 1, Dave Bosma said was he just hopes that as a society we can get to a point where we can step back and go, look, I don't find this word offensive, but somebody else does.
Yes.
So therefore, maybe I shouldn't use it.
Understand people's sort of relationship with these words is sort of an important one.
Yeah. And so hopefully by us taking you through the stats and by taking you through the history of these words, we've been able to teach you a little bit on who might find these words offensive or why these words are offensive. So we hope you guys have learned something. We know that we have, and we just want to say a massive thank you for sticking with us throughout the whole thing.
And also a massive thank you to our guests as well, because of course we have Dave Bosma. In episode 1, we had James Daniels, Hilary Muir, Lana Searle, Liam Donnelly, and of course Mel Abbott today. And a massive thank you to Stacy Wood of the BSA for accompanying us throughout this journey of looking into offensive words. Her help has been immeasurable.
So Dylan, as always, like every week, we've had so many opinions, so much information thrown at our face, but there's one thing that we can say for certain, isn't there?
Oh yes.
And that is we are, and we will not see you next Tuesday.